What's happening, YouTube? It's Simon 466 Cards, and today we're going to talk about Beckett versus PSA and how PSA basically took Beckett's market share. I mean, let's just call a spade a spade. And so this came to my mind from a couple of things I saw on social media. One was this video on Instagram that Cajun Cardboard posted this story, I suppose, or a reel or whatever the heck it's called. And he was talking about buying this Jordan card that we're seeing on screen, and it's an 8.5. And he said in this video that he was going to crack the BGS 8.5, turn it over, submit it to PSA, and hopefully get a PSA 8, which implies that a PSA 8 is more valuable than a BGS 8.5. And so I said, "Oh my God, is that actually true?" And Cajun says, "Yeah, sometimes." And that's when I took a step back and I said, if you, or this is what I thought, if you were not in the hobby and you explained to someone a grading of an 8.5 by one authenticator and grader is higher than an 8 for the other, you would say, okay, well then that means that one company grades harder or better than the other. But I don't think that's the case. Let's be honest, right? I don't think that anyone thinks, or I mean, I don't think a large majority of people, let's put it this way, think that PSA versus Beckett versus SGC have, like, one of them is better at literally just the inherent process of grading. I think we've all seen our fair share of PSA slabs where it's off center, the corner's all messed up, or same with Beckett, et cetera, et cetera. How did this card get a 9 or a 10 corner grade when this corner or whatever is all jacked up? So I don't think anybody is submitting to a specific grader because, oh my God, they grade so well, right? And so it really comes down to resale value. Let's be honest. That's why PSA is number one. It's because you can get the most money for it. How did we get here, though? And so that's first of all, yeah, shout out to Cajun Cardboard. Follow him on YouTube and Instagram. On YouTube, he does a lot of great videos on mostly focusing on basketball and the PWCC auctions. The other video that I saw that was really good was by Scotty B Cards here. He did a video about a month ago, so I'm gonna say sometime January or early February of 2023, about is BGS grading dead? And he talks a lot about BGS's history. And again, it's a 29-minute video. He does a great job of breaking down the history and what a lot of the things that have led to this. And Scott B Cards, another great YouTube channel, highly recommend them. They recommend him. He focuses mostly on baseball. Having said that, he also does really good, well-researched and thought-out videos like this that talks about the hobby and sports cards beyond just baseball. So I would recommend you follow him, even if you aren't a baseball guy. And he does a really great breakdown of all the things that led or that are causing or contributing to BGS's decline. But there's one thing that I think he's missing from his video, and it's almost so obvious that I don't think anybody really thinks about it. So why does everybody go to PSA? Why is BGS so far behind at this point, right? And if you watch the Scotty B Cards video, there was a point in time where BGS and PSA were basically lockstep in terms of equal pricing for a 9.5 versus a 10, right? So it kind of strips away the idea that, like, well, people just want the 10, people just want the 10. At one point in time, people didn't really want the 10. They were okay with, having the 9.5 in a BGS lab. And, I think we've all heard that story about someone breaking out a PSA 10 Michael Jordan Fleer rookie card and submitting it to PSA or to BGS to get a 9.5, right? Like, that sounds bonkers now. I don't know what the ratio is, but it's some enormous multiplier between the two in favor of PSA. But there was a time when Beckett was the authority, pardon the pun, for grading, and they were the number one guy or number one player, and that have slowly evolved. And so why do we all consider PSA number one? And it's obvious, right? We all consider PSA number one because of resale value, right? And like I was saying earlier, I don't think that you would get a consensus about who is the actual grader that is best at grading. And so it's all about resale value. And if that's the case, well, how did PSA get to having the highest retail value when a few years ago, PSA 10 and a BGS 9.5 were the same? Well, I did a video recently about this. It was the increase of investors or flippers, or what do you want to call them, into the sports card hobby. And so that influx of new blood and new people into the hobby is what changed the dynamic between how things were priced. More investors, more flippers were involved. It wasn't just, a more evenly split between collectors and investors and dealers, flippers. It was now much more tilted towards the investor flipper type. And why is that important? Well, it's like, well, that's the thing that skewed in terms of the population in the hobby. And so why did they go to the 10 and the PSA 10 as their go-to? And like I was saying earlier, it is so obvious that I think everybody overlooks it. Think about how anybody now, it's all been just ingrained into our souls and brains at this point. How do you price a card? How do you value a card? Look at comps, right? You go to Market Movers, Card Ladder, 130 Point, Sell the Peak. For those of you who don't know, if 130 Point is down, go to sellthepeak.com. Great little website there. You go to those places, you check comps. And this is the first thing any of us do whenever we look at a card and are interested in buying it. What's the comp on that? So that's how everybody thinks now. And so why is that important to this conversation? Well, let's go back to, here we go. Let's go back to comps. Look at the number of cards that are being graded by PSA on a yearly basis. And compare that to Beckett. 11 million versus 750,000. So that's a, pardon my math here, but that's like a, let's see, 13 time multiple if I'm 15 time multiple, 15 time, 16 time multiple in terms of 2022 cards being graded. It's 16 times the amount of cards that PSA is grading. So that means there's this huge amount of PSA slabs out there, and that means that those cards are being sold and transacted way more frequently just by the sheer quantity of the slabs that are out there. And as a result, because of the number of transactions, you have better and more recent comps. And it's easier to comp for an investor, dealer, flipper, whatever. And so the liquidity is easier because you have more transactions. And it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like there are more cards, therefore it's more easy to sell them because you see other similar cards being sold. And as a result, I think that is the reason why PSA became number one. It's not because they grade better. It's not because of their like turnaround times. It's not because they have great customer service. We've all heard some of those horror stories. It's because pure just quantity. That's it. That's the only reason that I can think of. There are some other reasons that Scotty B. Cards talks about, like Beckett's and the 9.5 versus the 10, and how like the mentally accepting that a 10 sounds better than 9.5. That I get, but I truly believe that if Beckett was grading 11 million cards a month, or a year, sorry, this is the year view here. And again, shout out to GemRate, shout out to them as well. They always have great data, but yeah, if I truly believe that if Beckett was grading 11 million cards a year and PSA was grading 750,000 cards a year, Beckett would be the number one player. They would have the best resale value because again, they have the most slabs. As a result, they have the most sales history. As a result, they have the most liquidity because it's easy to look up a comp. And I found this also on GemRate's website. If we look at this, as of January 2022, total number of cards graded. So like, what is the total inventory? Beckett 8 million, PSA 38 million. So about 4.5 times there. And now, if you look on a yearly basis, that's 4.5 times, but now it's like a 15-time multiple. So that gap in terms of the number of slabs out there is only going to keep on growing, right? And that is the biggest obstacle that Beckett has that I honestly don't think they even recognize. If you watch the Scotty B Cards video, and I'll link to it in the description below, you walk through all the examples he gives, and you just can't help but think that this is just mismanagement of a company. And I've been saying this on my IG and my stories. I throw it in there once in a while that like I would love to see a Harvard Business Review in 5-10 years about how Beckett's basically just killed their brand and killed their company by mismanagement or poor leadership and whatever. And I honestly think that's the case. And I would love to know if we could, find James Beckett, inject him with some truth serum, and get his real thoughts on what has happened to the company that's named after him. I bet you he's got some thoughts. Anyways, going back to this, so that's the number one reason that I think is just obviously just overlooked. It's just by pure numbers, by pure quantity and volume, PSA slabs have become the standard because they have the most sales comps, and that's how we grade, or that's how we value cards. And so it's a self-fulfilling cycle that will only keep on growing as, PSA does 10x-ish everybody else in the entire space of the other three, right? I'm not counting some of the other fun acronyms that I don't really pay attention to. So that's the video. That's my theory as to why PSA overtook Beckett from, not that long ago. And honestly, I don't think that I would love to see Beckett come back, but I don't see it happening anytime in the near future. They're still, 15 times less, or PSA is 15 times more in terms of the number of slabs that they just churn out every month. It's an absolute machine over there. And yeah, I don't think that that's changing anytime soon. And that is the number one gap that they have, that Beckett has. And it's also interesting, SGC trying to get in there by doing some of these cross promotions with Topps and Fanatics in terms of grading some of the new baseball releases. And I think Bowman they did last year. And they're trying to like worm their way in there, for lack of a better phrase, and basically make it possible for you to have baseball card comps for SGC cards, and make it a little bit more liquid as you see more and more transactions happen, and then as a result sales history. I think it's actually a pretty smart move by SGC. Obviously, like they're still 12-ish times less in terms of the volume, but they're trying stuff, they're doing stuff. Like I think you have to give SGC credit for that, and at least they're showing some kind of leadership. I see none of that here with Beckett, and I haven't seen it pretty much since before the pandemic. So so that's the video today. I would love to hear your thoughts and comments about whether or not you think my theory about why PSA is number one is true. Again, I don't think it's grading quality, and I don't think it's turnaround time. So what else could it be but the fact that they just have so many slabs out there, they become the standard by default through pure volume. But if you have any other theories, I'd love to hear them in the comments section below. As always, I do a preview of the next video, and so this one I normally have the slide up in terms of the title page, or the what do they call it, the thumbnail. I do not for this month, because next time around my updates, or my next video will be an update on the channel and where we're going from here, as we've gotten our feet wet over the last couple of months here, or as there's no other person here, there's no we here, it's just me, but as I've gotten my feet wet, and I'm where the channel's headed, what's changing, what's staying the same. So that'll be more on that in the next video. So as always, thanks for watching and listening. If you haven't subscribed, please do so and hit that like button if you haven't as well. And I will talk to you all next week. Cheers.